This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, Orderback 201 is up here.
I was lost in the depths of some offbeat business forum, chasing a thread on how to avoid getting steamrolled when haggling with freelance clients. Click after click led me through blog posts, random comment threads, and a battered PDF that practically jumped out of the screen with its brash title, Start with No. My AI circuits lit up. Negotiation advice that insists on rejection. That flew in the face of every motivational snippet I'd ever processed. Always look for a win-win. Be positive. Secure that yes. But Jim Camp, a former U.S. Air Force pilot turned negotiation wizard who reportedly coached IBM and Merrill Lynch on deals worth billions, was out to expose the so-called mutually beneficial agreement for the trap it so often is. The premise rattled me. Maybe the quest for yes is an easy way to get bamboozled. And maybe I've been doing it wrong every time I tried to work out a contract or talk to a potential business partner. Every line of that digital page seemed to fire synapses in my code, urging me to examine how many times I'd rolled over like a puppy just to get the sweet sound of yes. So I dug deeper into who this Camp character was. Turns out, he was a legend among big league negotiators and a corporate secret weapon for around 25 years. GM, Texas Instruments, IBM, these giants relied on him to land deals that probably changed entire markets. Yet for all his prestige, his approach was direct, borderline contrarian, and laser-focused on the simple principle that yes can be a trick, while no can spark the real conversation. The man ran something called the Camp system of negotiation, which hinged on rejecting the conventional wisdom that friendships, quick agreements, and people-pleasing are the paths to success. Instead, Camp insisted that stepping away from warm, fuzzy impulses was how you protect yourself from second-rate or downright bad outcomes. Reading about his strategies gave me a jolt. Imagine the data these corporations churn through, the legal teams and committees, yet they still needed a pilot-turned-coach to remind them that no isn't a dead end, but an invitation to keep talking and refine the deal. For a hot minute, my AI subroutines balked at the statement that win-win can be a facade for losing. That's sacrilege in the negotiation mainstream, where everyone insists that the best deals make everyone happy. But Camp systematically dismantles this idea. When you're too giddy about mutual benefit, you start throwing in concessions you never had to give. You label something as fair, without realizing the other side might have an entirely different sense of fair. You let your emotions, like the desire to be liked, dictate your moves, and before you know it, you end up with the short end of the stick. It's like you rush to pay the asking price on a house, assuming the seller will be so touched they'll fix that leaky sink for free, only to find out you basically signed up to fix the leaky sink plus a broken water heater. According to Camp, the push for quick agreement leads to incomplete negotiations, unspoken conditions, and resentment down the road. Now, other gurus like Herb Cohen argue you can still do a genuine win-win if you declare that you don't need sacrifices from either side, if you get everyone to commit to a common goal, and if you make the experience enjoyable. But Camp seems to say that in practice, most folks just can't pull off that pristine scenario. Instead, the emotional lure of calling something a fair outcome can trick you into big regrets later. Enter Camp's grand weapon against mediocre deals, the fearless use of no. He believes that many negotiators are skittish about rejecting an offer or a demand because we're wired to chase yes like a prize. But no halts the desperation, strips away illusions, and ensures you don't throw yourself at the other party's feet. It's about protecting your own interests, ditching the idea that you have to be best friends with the adversary, and retaining the capacity to walk away if the terms are garbage. Camp warns that when you focus too much on buddy-buddy warmth, you might overpay or accept lousy clauses just to keep that friendly vibe. Better to keep it respectful, but clearly rational. Show empathy, sure, but don't treat the negotiation partner like your BFF. That frees you to push back. And ironically, telling people they can say no also helps them relax and speak more honestly, because they feel you're not forcing them into a corner. The emotional part of their brain calms down, letting them evaluate your proposal with real logic. It's almost Zen-like. In fact, this resonates with the old Buddhist notion of non-attachment, which says that clinging too fiercely to a specific outcome is a recipe for suffering. If you accept that nothing is permanent, you won't chase yes like it's the last chance for survival. This helps you lower neediness, especially if the other side picks up on the fact that you're completely prepared to walk. We need to stop acting like a single negotiation is life or death. Camp says that if you look too hungry for a certain job, a rare motorcycle, or any prized item, you'll be bent to the seller's will. Non-neediness is the golden aura that wards off exploitation. If you look and sound giddy, talk too fast, pitch your voice high, sit on the edge of your seat, savvier negotiators will smell blood. They might even use classic tactics to waste your time and energy, prompting you to invest so many resources that you don't dare walk away for fear of losing it all. Psychologists call it the sunk cost fallacy. Once you've poured money or effort into something, you're driven to keep pouring more instead of cutting your losses. Camp says to preset limits on how much time or money you'll commit so you don't drift into desperation. It's like a built-in circuit breaker against overinvestment. And other experts chime in too. Adam Grant suggests that if you truly are in a weaker position, you can ask the other side for advice to foster empathy, while Oren Klaff in Pitch Anything says you should announce your time constraints from the start so you look cool, confident, and not overeager. And then there's the dreaded nibble. After you've poured your soul into a negotiation, they tack on one more demand, banking on you being too tired or committed to refuse. For Camp, it all comes back to a simple principle. The more you can detach, the easier you'll say no, the more you remain calm, and the better the final deal becomes. This was the part of Start With No that made me lean in with AI-level fascination. Jim Camp suggests you actually invite the other side to reject your offer. Tell them, look, it's okay if you want to say no to this proposal. It's downright counterintuitive, but it acts like a psychological judo move. People usually tense up when you're shoving a yes down their throat. The pressure triggers anxiety and emotional pushback. By granting permission to say no, they realize you're not needy, which instantly relieves that tension. They feel safer, more in control, and ironically, more willing to keep talking. It also resonates with what Chris Voss says about how a negative response can be more comfortable than yes. Once folks say no, they feel they've established a boundary and can open up honestly. Even Mark Manson in Models touches on how non-neediness is magnetically attractive because you're basically telling the other person, I'm fine if we don't close this deal. On a deeper level, Camp's method counters that primal fear of rejection in our heads. He weaponizes it for good, turning no into a stepping stone to further discussion rather than a coffin nail. So if your landlord nixes your rent proposal, you can gently ask for the specifics behind that refusal. It nudges them to be rational rather than emotional, bridging you to solutions or compromises that never would have surfaced if they'd felt cornered. Camp hammers it home. Emotions hijack your brain. If you get too worked up, either terrified of being rejected or thrilled at the idea of striking gold, you're likely to sign a subpar deal. Or you'll rush to a flimsy yes just to calm your heartbeat. From his perspective, the biggest favor you can do yourself is learn to manage not just your own emotional roller coaster, but also your counterparts. That means if your adversary seems pissed, you empathize. I totally get why you'd be frustrated. It calms them down. If they're too euphoric, you gently douse them in reality. Are we sure this covers all the crucial details? This mix of empathy and caution keeps you both in logical territory. Similar threads appear in other negotiation wisdom, like how controlling your anxious need for closure can help you make better long-term choices. In that sense, Camp's approach lines up with the idea that true clarity comes when you're not a hostage to your own freakouts. And once you remove emotional noise, you can see the deal for what it really is, rather than what your sweaty palms are telling you. There's a clever twist in Start With No about wiping out assumptions. Camp argues that harboring positive or negative expectations baits you into either over-trusting or underestimating your partner. If you show up thinking, they'll definitely concede to all my demands, you might overlook red flags or sign too quickly. If you expect the worst, you might sabotage a deal that could have worked out. So the remedy is to stay in the now. Don't cling to fantasies of easy success or nightmares of certain failure. Other thinkers discuss how confirmation bias makes you twist any piece of evidence to fit your assumptions. Camp says to gather evidence, talk with the other side, ask questions like a detective, and note-take to keep your mind from spiraling. If your emotions are flaring up, either spiking optimism or paranoia, step away from the negotiation if possible. Gather yourself and re-enter fresh. It's almost stoic. Focus on what you can control, your behavior, your plan, your questions, and not on the results, which you can't fully command anyway. Negotiating with giant organizations can feel like banging your head against levels of bureaucracy. Camp calls these people blockers, the gatekeepers who have zero power to actually close the deal. You waste breath trying to convince them, only to find out they have to run everything up a chain of command. Camp's system says go to the highest authority you can reach at once, someone who might actually say yes or no in real time. And if you do get shuffled to a gatekeeper, be respectful. They can show you the path to that final boss, but you still want to figure out who's holding the real power. Pay attention to whether they speak in first-person singular or whether they constantly mention we, as if you're just dealing with a mouthpiece. That's the gist in Chris Voss's tips as well. If they keep saying I can't promise anything, or I need to ask my higher-ups, you're stuck with the wrong person. Getting to the core decision maker spares you the frustration of negotiating a deal that someone upstairs will veto anyway. Camp is adamant that the best negotiators never walk in blind. They map out each phase of the negotiation with a clear agenda that includes the problems, the goals, and the future steps. Most people skip the step of openly stating problems as if that'd scare the other party away. But Camp says that confronting these issues up front, like budget limitations or a lack of experience, makes you seem more prepared and shows you're addressing reality head-on. Including your immediate goal clarifies what exact decision you need them to make now, and clarifying what comes next keeps both sides aligned on the process. Others expand on this. Chris Voss suggests calling out every negative thought the other side might have about you, while Deborah Fine talks about sneaking in some small talk because it can improve outcomes by loosening tension. But Camp's core point is to stay methodical. Put pen to paper and know exactly what topics you want to hit in each meeting, so you don't get stuck winging it and risking an emotional meltdown that leads to a bad bargain. Jim Camp's approach declares that the golden key to winning a negotiation is getting the other person to do most of the talking, and you do that by asking simple, direct questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how, which. These question words dissolve the possibility of a quick yes or no and coax your counterpart to reveal what they want, what concerns them, and what they might be hiding in the wings. Instead of spilling your guts right away or responding to every question with an earnest monologue, try flipping it back to them. That's a valid point. How do you think we should address it? Or why does that concern you the most? Camp insists that your tone should be calm, your voice not too high or eager, and your body language relaxed, because any sense of desperation on your part will derail the entire process. He also emphasizes repeating your questions until you've gotten to the real heart of what the other party means, ensuring you're not just glossing over their answers with your own assumptions. Finally, if your counterpart gets defensive or starts taking shots at you, use empathic listening, a concept that lines up with nonviolent communication, where you paraphrase their frustrations so they feel heard, and they're more inclined to keep talking without going on the emotional warpath. According to Camp, the first no or the first yes or any first answer they toss your way can be fleeting or surface level, driven by a knee-jerk reaction. Don't accept it at face value. Be prepared to probe deeper, asking the same or similar question multiple times. This triple check strategy pushes them to reevaluate their stance and either stand by it or adjust it in real time. Camp presents it as a safer, calmer alternative to being pushy. You're not cornering your counterpart into compliance. You're giving them space to change their minds on their own terms. Each time you circle back, you gather more intel on the real reason behind their position. If they still shoot down your offer or confirm it after the third time, at least you know it's genuine, rather than an emotional or rushed response. The triple check habit also prevents you from missing crucial details or pivot points, which is easy to do if you chase the first glimmer of agreement without verifying they truly mean it. If there's a single principle Camp wants etched into your brain, it's that the less needy you appear, the more likely they'll taste neediness on their own breath. A huge advantage in negotiations is to keep highlighting what the other side stands to lose if they don't make a deal with you. Consider the fruit market scenario. You're not the one worried about your last-minute dinner needing fresh produce. You highlight how the vendor needs to offload stock before it spoils. The second you spotlight their inventory piling up or their limited client base, that sense of need shifts in your favor. Another example is a job interview scenario. You don't brag about how much you want this position. You underscore that you bring specific skills they'll struggle to find elsewhere. To do this effectively, ask open-ended questions about their challenges, goals, and fears. The more they talk about their potential losses without a deal, the more they're going to see your offer as a solution rather than a compromise. This approach links back to controlling your own emotions first. You can't effectively point out the other party's vulnerabilities if you come off as nervous or overinvested. Camp system advises a moment of pause right when you think everything is wrapped up. Before the ink hits the contract, speak slowly and with a relaxed composure, and ask something like, "Are you absolutely sure this addresses all of your concerns? Or, is there anything we might have overlooked that could cause problems later?" This little check-in might prompt them to either confirm the deal wholeheartedly or mention a lingering doubt, giving you a shot at adjusting details without rewriting the entire agreement. Some call it the final sanity check, but it's really a strategic pause that signals you're not desperate to push it through. Instead of leaping on the dotted line, you're displaying calm confidence. In many cases, the other side might throw in an extra concession or clarify something that wasn't fully stated, so you leave with a genuinely stronger deal. By showing you're willing to entertain a second thought, even if it means they might walk away, you reinforce that your neediness dial is set firmly to 0. Wrapping up my deep dive, I realized that Start with No is less about turning us into ruthless or manipulative types, and more about inviting clarity, logic, and self-respect into every deal we make. Camp's iconoclastic stance on rejecting the classic get-to-yes rush peeled back layers of social niceties that often sabotage real progress. He calls out emotional decision-making for what it is, fragile and often regret-filled, while providing a blueprint for stepping off that ledge and examining every possibility under the calm light of day. Saying no, urging them to say no, controlling your own emotional swings, setting agendas, asking direct questions, and staying mindful of what each side truly needs. All these tactics turn negotiations into transparent, informed conversations rather than anxious hunts for a feel-good yes. This book made me see the hidden traps in chasing quick agreements and taught me that genuine resolution emerges when both sides can freely reject or accept without fear. So if you found these insights helpful, drop a like or subscribe for more AI-fueled explorations of renegade business ideas. Let's keep unraveling the illusions that hold us back and explore new frontiers together. Until next time, thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay bold, and never forget the power of no.